Welcome back, or if it's your first time, I'm glad to have you here. I'm Matt Fendora, and you're tuned in to the Choose to Live, Love, and Grow podcast, where we journey together toward becoming the best version of ourselves. Using mind, body, heart, and spirit as the anchors of our podcast, join me as we set sail into the depths of self-discovery, unraveling the interconnected layers that shape our growth. If you resonate with today's conversation, consider subscribing to the podcast. Your support means the world to us and ensures you never miss an empowering episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Choose to Live, Love, and Grow podcast, your go-to destination for personal growth and empowerment. Whether you're a loyal listener or a newcomer, I'm grateful for your presence. Today, we have the pleasure of chatting with Yvonne Tchrakian. Yvonne is a corporate lawyer, founder of Pause.Peny, host of Up In Your Biz, and mom of 4 smallies, 5 and under. Her business was set up after the loss of a baby during pregnancy, and she is a huge believer that our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs create our reality. Some of Yvonne's proudest accomplishments include: she's proud that she took a risk and started her own small business that inspires people to live their best lives. She recently was on stage at one of the biggest health and wellness festivals, and her talk was hugely successful. Her podcast has made the Irish Apple self-improvement charts. What makes her heart sing? When people contact her and tell her their stories and that she has helped them achieve their goal or see things differently. It's all about human connection. Oh, and a good flat white also makes her heart sing. Without further ado, here's Yvonne. How are you doing today, Yvonne?
Good. It's so funny. You forget what you wrote. I'm writing all the time for my own podcast or for my side business or for my corporate job and the kids. So I didn't even remember any of that. So it was actually quite nice to listen back to it. So thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love a good flat white. Oh my God. Give me a good flat white any day.
I feel like that might be like a question I'm going to start asking at the end, because when you start hearing, there are some people who just really enjoy their drinks. And I've had someone where they love a nice iced chai tea. And as we were doing the podcast, like, oh yeah, I am drinking an iced chai tea right now. I'm like, it's,
Yeah, I'm a bit I get up in the morning and I have my coffee first thing. It's like my moment in the morning to have my coffee by myself, get up before the kids get up, and then I start my like kind of little morning routine. But a lot of people talk about caffeine and how maybe it's not that good for you, but I just think like we can't give up everything we love in our life. Like if
yeah,
that brings you so much joy, which it brings me, I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it in my morning routine. I'm not giving that up.
yeah, yeah. I definitely hear you on that. I definitely need that coffee first thing. But it's interesting because I feel like we're similar in the sense of we need the caffeine because of how much work we do. Because for me, I have my daytime job and I do this. For you, you have the same thing where you're a corporate lawyer and you're an entrepreneur. So I'd love to start there and how that came to be.
So, a corporate lawyer actually started, probably was the reason why I got into manifestation in a very roundabout, weird way. So, we moved to California when I was 2.5, and from a really, really young age, maybe 5 or 6, I can remember my aunt telling me, who lived in California as well. Every time she saw me, which was on a weekly basis, she would say to me, Yvonne, someday you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor. Someday a lawyer or a doctor. And I always took lawyer in my head. I was an extremely kind of curious child, always asking questions, never stopped talking. Second child in the family of 4, quite confident generally, but I didn't grow up with a lot. We didn't grow up with a lot of money. My dad was a carpenter, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, whereas my uncles that moved to California from Ireland, they set up a huge plumbing business and they were really living the American dream, but they took on like a lot of risk, a lot of employees, but it paid off. They were doing just phenomenal. So I did kind of grow up with like a scarcity, a background of scarcity around money and stuff, but I always used to like what my dad would say, no, we can't, go to Disneyland, or we can't do this, or we can't afford that. I used to always remember saying to myself, um, when I grow up, I'm never going to have to worry about money. And I just would repeat that to myself all the time. And I acknowledge that some kids would take that on. They take that on and have anxiety around money, and that's probably more normal than what I did, right? But there was no lawyers in the family, nothing like that. We had no connections or anything, but I knew I was going to be a lawyer. So when we moved back to Ireland, I went from like a public school in California, boys, girls, junior high, to this, all Irish Catholic girls' school wearing a uniform. But I was quite studious and I knew I was going to do law. And it's a different system in Ireland than it is in the US, where you literally like do your exams and you go straight into what you want to do. But I didn't get the points to do law. I didn't get into the college that I wanted to go to, even though I was quite studious, but I kind of went a back route. And then it was 2008 when I was looking to get a job in a law firm. They're called traineeships here, and nobody was interviewing me. But I had this belief. I was like, I'm going to get into one of the top Irish law firms. I just know it. I believe it. And just by chance, my mom ran into a local politician. This happens a lot in Ireland. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. In the bank, he asked about me and he said, "Listen, let me connect her." My mom said she's struggling to get a job in a law firm. He said, "Let me connect her with two partners in two of the top law firms in Dublin. They'll just review her CV." So when an opportunity knocks, that's what I say manifestation is. When opportunity knocks, you take your opportunity. And they were just really reviewing my CV, but one of the guys called me the next day and said, "Hey, would you like a job as a paralegal, either in the banking department or on my team in corporate?" And was like, "Your team, corporate, that's what I wanted." And I just worked my way up. I got promoted a year before I expected to get promoted. I used to say, someday I'm going to be the company secretary of a public company. It's always manifesting something, but I thought it would be way, way far out. And then I was working on a transaction, and the client asked me to come across as their first employee in Europe. And it's actually a neuroscience-based company, publicly listed on NASDAQ, and just was exactly the dream job I was manifesting. But I didn't expect it to happen. I was 29 at the time. I didn't expect it to happen at such a young age. So have always been pretty competitive, a pretty positive, glass half full sort of person. Believed in myself, would even when I was challenged, I knew like I'll get there. So, and I always say with manifestation, sometimes you don't know how, you don't ask how, you just start taking the steps to get there. So yeah, so then after that, I was in left private practice law, went in-house and started to have a family, got married, had a family, but I had three miscarriages before I had my son. And then I had my son, and after that, I got pregnant with the little girl, and she passed away during pregnancy. I was 21 weeks pregnant, so her name was Polly. And it was at that point in my life that I was like, I think everybody goes through this thing in life, whether it's grief or redundancy, a divorce, a separation, an illness, a child is sick, something like everyone is going to be challenged at some point. But I feel like we almost need that challenge to wake us up and shake us up. And I was really happy in law, and I still am happy in law, but I realized that like you've only got one shot, you know, and do what you really want to and do what you really love. Initially, the brand Pause.Peny started with me it was just for myself. I wasn't going to monetize it at all. I went back to my gratitude practice, but I couldn't write like lots of things per day. I could only write one thing, like it would be something like, "I'm grateful I didn't have any nightmares last night," or "I was really grateful for my son because, I had one child. I was really grateful, it was during COVID, so I was grateful that they still had outdoor fitness classes. So I was able to go to fitness classes outside, which I really needed for my kind of mindset.
Mhm.
Um, And then I just, right before that, like in November of 2019, so Polly passed in May of 2020. I had a friend of mine came over and I was like, okay, I've always been the type of person that writes everything down. Like if I have any goal, I write it down. And there's a lot of science behind that. If you write it down, if you take action, if you've got accountability, you're over 70% more likely to achieve it. So my friend came over and she was like, okay, we're both going to write down what we're manifesting, which I always did anyway, but I was kind of her accountability partner. But she was very into yoga and stuff. She's a lawyer as well. And then she said, but we're going to bury it under your apple tree in your garden. I was like, okay, well, that's not really me, like burying it under a tree or whatever, but like, let's go with it. But I had remembered at the time. So, um, I had stayed on in the company that I was in as a non-exec director, but I was leaving as an employee. And I was looking for a job in tech at the time. So I wrote down that I wanted to be head of legal and operations for a tech startup, and I wanted a baby and lots of other different things, right? And that was in November of 2019. And by the January of 2020, so a couple months later, I was pregnant. That was with Polly, and I had started in a new company, a tech startup, as head of legal and operations. Exactly what I had written down. And but then look, like life, the universe, whatever you want to call it, throws you challenges, and that baby passed away, and tech wasn't for me. I ultimately left tech, but it was an amazing opportunity to learn because it taught me so much of the little day-to-day things that you need to learn about running your own business. Like, for example, in Ireland, filing a VAT return. So I had to do all those little things that I would have had no idea how to do, but for the fact that I worked for this startup as head of legal and operations, where I had to do pretty much everything. But I feel like, in times of grief and in times where you're being challenged, you just absolutely have to take responsibility for yourself. Like at some point, you have to dig yourself out of whatever grief hole or challenge that you're in. And I knew from having three miscarriages before I had my firstborn, I spent so much time just being so sad in my marriage. Like I definitely manifested my soulmate, like married my soulmate, but I was just so sad that I didn't have a baby and everybody around me was having one. They were on their second one. And every holiday there was like a sort of like my husband always says it, like a black cloud over me because I was just had this sadness. And I knew after the loss of Polly that like I wasted so many years being so sad for something that I really wanted, which is understandable, but I couldn't do that again. It was almost like it was the lesson that I needed before the big bang of the loss. Like, had I not gone through that big lesson of the three miscarriages before, who knows how I would have taken it? I don't know, right?
Hmm.
But I was really grateful for my son, and then Pause.Peny just kind of started. And, I wasn't really initially intending to monetize it. So I got pregnant after Polly with another little girl called Penelope. So that's where the name came. Pause was Polly, Penny is Penelope. And just kind of took off from there. And then after that, I got pregnant with twins. And I launched the business 1 month before I had the twins and then so I was on maternity, went leave. I just went back to work in January, but the August of 2023, I started my podcast. So I'm doing lots of things, but I probably would say I'm not doing anything to 100 or 110% because I've got the corporate job, I've got the Pause.Peny, I've got all up in your biz, and I've got the kids. But one thing, if I've learned anything about life, is to enjoy the journey. So I'm not in this rush with Pause.Peny to like get to the top or anything. I really just want to enjoy it all, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, and that I mean, there's so much there that you're working on that it feels as though you have that sense sometimes of overwhelm. So in those moments? I'm really curious. How do you handle those moments of overwhelm that are bound to happen when you focus on so many different things, especially with so many young kids too?
I think that like you have to recognize that it's overwhelm. You almost have to be like, okay, the reason why I'm overwhelmed right now is because I've got board meetings. One of the kids is sick. I've got to do a podcast episode. Um, I'm doing a live for blah, blah, blah. And just actually recognizing it and saying, okay, where can I take a little bit of a either step back or where can I set some boundaries, right? And a lot of the time, overwhelm can happen because you're taking on too much and or you don't have the ability to say no, right? And this happened to me recently. So your podcast is the third podcast I've done this weekend. I did one on Friday, I did one on Saturday, and I'm doing one today. And I told myself, I have promised myself, even if Mel Robbins comes calling, I am not doing any more podcasts until at least September. And so we have to set overwhelms a lot of the time comes because we're not setting our own boundaries, you know? And the reason why I say yes to podcasts a lot of the time is because I'm a podcast host and I know what it's like to reach out to somebody and want them on your podcast. I want to help people out. I want to go on their podcasts. I want to share, especially if they want me on. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know why you want me on, but anyway. Um, but at some point, you have to be able to say no to things. And even for me, even events, people ask me, oh, do you want to do this event? It's so good for the brand. It is, but it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of time away from my kids. And at sometimes you just have to remember that you don't have to do everything as much as you want to, because when you get to that stage of overwhelm, you start forgetting things, calls that are on or meetings that you have or kids appointment, and that's just not good. Like, why are we pushing ourselves to the absolute edge? I actually very interesting. I heard I always just thought I had like a really good work ethic and a hard work ethic because my dad was like that. He was a really has a really amazing work ethic. He worked 6 days a week in California, and we never really would see him from morning to night. Unbelievable. But then I heard Gabor Mate on a podcast, Gabor that studies all the trauma. And he was talking to Rangan Chatterjee, which is a UK doctor, on his podcast. And Rangan asked him about like regrets. And he said, I wish I didn't work so hard, which is one of the five regrets of the dying in the book. And he said, working that hard is actually a trauma response. Like it's almost like having to prove yourself. You're proving yourself. And I'm trying to figure out who in the name of God am I proving myself to, because I've always had it in me. But every now and again, I have to remember that like there's no, because the funny thing about me is I don't really care what people think about me. I don't have that. I don't think I'm a huge people pleaser, but I love to do lots of different things. But there has to be something there. Um, but yeah, we all have something, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely can relate to that because I know I'm always busy, I'm always moving, and when I tell people what I do, I've had people like, "Wow, I'm exhausted just hearing you say the things that you do," and I'm like,
Yeah.
and I know where that comes from me, um, in a way. I think I'm still, it's not clearly defined, but I know enough about myself that I know where that response comes from. So it's interesting hearing that come from somebody else as well.
Yeah, I think it's because my dad came from and my mom came from farming backgrounds in Ireland, and I was the first kind of person to have this kind of professional career like doctor, lawyer. And I felt like I needed to prove myself that I could do great things. So I think I've just continued on like that. But the other side of it is as well is I do love what I do. I love my corporate job. I love the team. So I've never hated any job I've worked in. Um, whether that's just my personality and the ability to just change a negative into a positive. And I also absolutely love the podcasting and I love Pause.Peny. So a lot of the time it doesn't feel like work. It only starts to feel like work when you're doing things like getting up in the morning and not exercising because you're responding to emails and you're skipping that and tell yourself you're going to exercise, but one thing leads into another, and you don't do it, and then you haven't done it for a week. And that's kind of where I am right now. So I'm changing that up tomorrow. Tomorrow is a Monday whenever your podcast comes out. But this tomorrow is a Monday for me. And you don't have to start on a Monday, people. I did 15 minutes this morning, but I wasn't doing a consistent workout. But I need to prioritize my health, you know.
Hmm. Hmm. So I'd love to dive into the topic that we have, which is manifestation. So can you explain to the audience what is manifestation?
Okay, so a lot of people think manifestation is a lot of like hippy dippy, woo woo, magic sort of stuff. I think even though I think The Secret by Rhonda Byrne is a good book, it may have led to the perception that like you think something into existence and it appears like a soulmate, a house, the dream job, whatever. But for me, I love the neuroscience behind manifestation, but there's also an element for me of spirituality. I am spiritual. I do believe there's something more, and Dr. Tara Swart, who's a neuroscientist, big, huge manifester in this space, is kind of on that side as well. Now, I have interviewed neurosurgeon James Doty, who's written a book called The Neuroscience Behind Manifestation, and he's very straight down the middle. He's like, no, it's all science, none of this like spiritual stuff. He doesn't believe in God, none of that. So I think people need to figure out what it is for them. I'm a bit of a blend of science and spirituality. But I absolutely believe, without a doubt, our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs are creating our reality on a daily basis. I believe manifestation is your vibe. It's your lifestyle. It is who you are as a person. If you were to ask someone, like, if you were to describe a family member or friend, and you ask them, okay, choose your most positive friend, or then choose your most negative friend, that is what your manifestation style is. It's who you are on a daily basis. And I always say it's a lifestyle. If you're living, if you're breathing, which you are because you're listening to this podcast, you are manifesting, whether it's in the positive, the negative, or you're just coasting along. But for me, I've really seen the neuroscience behind manifestation of the science behind writing everything down. You write it down, like I said, write it down, take action, have accountability. You're over 70% more likely to achieve your goal. If you write it down, there's so much benefit to writing it down because it fires up the brain. The brain tags it as important to you. And that's how I view things. So I manifest everything from personal stuff, like way back in the day when I wanted to meet somebody, a soulmate, I have a crazy story about manifesting twins, but it's kind of so crazy that like people are like, how, but any jobs, the car, whatever cars we have, whatever I wanted, purpose, the podcast, the business, everything has been manifested. Speaking at huge events, but it's all for me, it's all a method. And I think where I probably differ to some other people who practice manifestation or are manifestation coaches or whatever is that I put in place a 7-step process, and it really, really makes you think. It puts the responsibility back on you because manifestation, like I said, is a lifestyle. It's all about you. Nobody's coming to save you. This is your life. It's not a practice round. So you've got to figure out what works for you. So I created a 7-step process where you start with the first card is what do you want? Matt, you'd be absolutely amazed at how many people don't actually know what they want in life. They're like, oh, I don't know. I don't even know what I want to do or where I want to go or what I want. And then there's other people who are like, oh, I have so many things, I just don't even know where to start. And then there's the people that like straight up, yeah, I'm starting a podcast. I want to write a book. So if you're a person that doesn't know, you're a bit confused, you're in a kind of that stage of you're just not sure, then I always say, write down how you want to feel. Like you want to feel valued, you want to feel purpose, you want to feel financially independent. And maybe there's a particular kind of, you see yourself traveling or you see yourself in the health and fitness. So just write down all those qualities. Your brain will start to tag those as important to you, and opportunities will start to like show up, right? Because your brain will have tagged it as important to you.
Hmm.
And then your second card is your heart is a hard card. It's your why. Why do you want it? And for me, like the stronger your why, the more likely you are going to achieve your goal. And there are many days that I question, what in the name of God am I doing with a podcast, a business, having four kids, and I'm a corporate lawyer, and I went to school for a long time to be a corporate lawyer, and I earn well. It's a job that pays well. But when I go back to and believe me, my friends would say the same thing. Why are you doing this? You're selling boxes. They're 24 euro. Are you crazy? Like, you know, um, but it's not about, you have to cut out what anybody else thinks, because this is your life, and what they think about what you're doing needs to be irrelevant. And I think we consume a little bit too much of that as humans. We think too much about what other people think. But I always go back to my why when I get rejections for the business again, or things just don't work out, or maybe sales are low. And the purpose behind the business is to inspire people to know you can manifest your dream life. Anybody can. This is not just for like the celebs. This is for everyone. You just have to have the right mindset. And then we get into our visualization cards, which are, what do you see when you're manifesting? Like, let's say you want to manifest, I don't know, a soulmate. You see yourself like getting married, or maybe you see yourself walking on the beach, or like maybe you want to run a marathon. It's a fitness one. So you see yourself joining a club or running. It's you're visualizing it, and there's just so much science behind the power of visualization. And so I visualize every single day what I want. Like every night before I go to bed, I visualize. And then the next card is, what do you hear? So like let's say you want to grow your podcast, um, and you want to make the charts. Like, what do you hear? As if you might hear yourself saying to your wife or your partner, "Oh my God, I got X amount of downloads. Oh my gosh, I'm in the Apple charts," or "Oh, I just hit number one in this, that, and the other," or "I just got a sponsor." Like, what do you hear? You know? Like you smiled there when I said sponsor. See? Like, what do you hear? But also on the flip side, so you write down what you hear, but as a separate process, you think about what you're saying to yourself. Like, let's say, someone wants to manifest a soulmate, and people say to me all the time, I want to meet somebody. And then they follow it up with, but it's so hard. You know, um, People want abundance in their life, and they're like, but everything's so expensive. I'm so broke. I've got no money. And then you want to grow your podcast, but you keep telling yourself, God, it's hard to get listeners or downloads, or I'll never get a sponsor for my podcast. I mean, I got a sponsor for my podcast for my first season, and I had no listeners. Anything is possible. I had written down I wanted a sponsor. Now I didn't know when it was going to happen, because how and when and timelines is not in manifestation, right? That's not up to you. So be conscious of what you're saying to yourself. You want to get fit and healthy, but you're going to the gym and you keep repeating to yourself, I'm so unfit. Like where it's like this, like when I interviewed a lady called Emma Seppala she's Yale and Stanford faculty, she called it the inner terrorist.
Mm.
It's that voice in your head that tells you that you're not strong, that you're not smart enough, or you're not good enough, or you can't do it. And it's like, And a lot of people don't start things because they're afraid of failure. And failure, if you're if you are afraid of failure, it tends to mean that you have no self-compassion, right? I'm
Mm.
not afraid of failing because I'm like, well, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, you know? And I would never say to a friend of mine, if she had a business and didn't work out, I'd never say she was a failure. But if you think about it, if you're afraid to fail, it means you're telling yourself that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. Like, of course, it wouldn't work out for you. And that means you've no self-love and self-compassion. So I always think that like regret has got to be way worse than failure. So I'm giving this a shot, and if it works, it works. And I'm hoping it does. I'm manifesting it does. So then the next card, the fifth card is what do you feel? So like you have to pretend you actually have what you want. Um, who are you calling? What are you telling them? What does your voice sound like? You say to, your wife, "Oh my God, I've just hit the charts. Like I'm so excited. I'm proud. you meet somebody, like what does it feel like for you? And you write those down like so like maybe proud, joy, happy, grateful. So and then what I do is every night I go back to those three cards, what you see, what you hear, what you feel, and you visualize it, you be it as if you have what you already want, right? So like, and then I do little things like if there's a particular car I want, I take it for a test drive. I know what it feels like in it. I take a picture with me in it. Every time I go to the podcast studio, every single time I pick up a podcast award and I say to the guys in the studio, I'm going to win a podcast award. I sound crazy. I look crazy, but I don't care. You've got to be able to feel it and like get those emotions involved, right? And then the sixth step is what action are you going to take? And this is where like a lot of people get it wrong. I actually recently had a girl contact me and she said, "Oh my God, it was the action step that I was missing." Because a lot of people will put up a vision board and they'll be like, "I want I don't know, whatever it is, material possessions on there," but they don't know why they want them on there. Like, why do you want the mansion? Why do you want the Ferrari? Like, really, why? And when there's a bit more purpose and meaning behind it, you're more likely, and if you're a bit more of service to others, you're more likely to stick with it, right? But what action are you going to take to achieve your goals? Sometimes, if you want more listeners on a podcast, well, maybe you've got to set up a TikTok, you've got to set up your LinkedIn, you've got to be consistent in your posting, you've got to reach out to guests, you've got to follow up with them, you've got to be persistent with it. Those are the action steps that you can take. And then some people might say, but like, what do I do for like a baby or a soulmate? And I say, but like, there's lots of things you can do. First of all, start a gratitude practice, one thing a day. There's always something to be grateful for. Always. If you're listening to the podcast, you've got your hearing, right? So that's that's pretty amazing. Um, and do your affirmations. Three affirmations. My favorite affirmations. I love affirmations. They help rewire the brain. We've both had Anne Sophie on, and like phenomenal neuroscientist. Like I always say my affirmations are like the best is yet to come. Everything always works out for me. I surrender and let go, like telling yourself that it's all going to work out. It's all going to be fine. Or I say a lot, like if you're going for the job or you want a particular house and you're really struggling, like you just, oh, I want it and you can't let go and you're totally consumed. My favorite thing is it's this or something better. It's
Mm.
this or so, and it's like it's flipping the script of your mindset. And then the last card, the seventh card, is what are you grateful for? So you write down just what you're grateful for. And I really believe there's so much neuroscience behind gratitude practice. A lot of people say, oh, I'm just wired this way. And it's true, like post, say, 25, when the brain is kind of formed and we've got some of our thoughts and our beliefs are embedded. it's harder to change. It's tr harder to rewire those neural pathways, but it's not impossible. But you have to be consistent, and there's an element of discipline there, you know. Not everybody wants to get up and exercise every day, for example, or whatever days, but it's like motivation's only going to get you so far. There's an element of having to be a little bit disciplined every day to do it, and you'll reap the rewards long term if you stay consistent. Consistency is key.
Hmm. What are some of the most common things you hear people manifesting?
For me, a lot of people who follow me, it's a baby.
Mhm.
And that's just because my story is just unbelievable. I've had four losses, one late, one at 5.5 months. And I said, pre all the kids, I said, well, I'm going to manifest twins, two boys at Christmas. And I had my boy, Polly passed away, I had my girl, and then all of a sudden I was done, done, done. And my husband was like, let's go for number three. So I said, fine. And I got pregnant, twins, two boys, due in January 2023, and they came on Christmas Eve. So that's one. A lot of people, soulmate, people really want to meet somebody, and I can understand kind of the personal ones of soulmate and baby. They're quite hard because you do feel like you're out of control with those, like you've less control over them, and they can be a bit all-consuming. So what I'm seeing now is baby, soulmate, dream job. Oh my gosh, dream job comes up all the time. The amount of people that hate their jobs is actually, I would say it's probably 80%
Yeah.
of people, at least people all the time. So what I created was, you have the 7 steps in the manifestation box. There's three things you can manifest. You can manifest as many as you want, but the box comes with three: manifestation one, two, and three. But there's also some free tools on the website, and one of them is, because I'm a lawyer, I like to bring the legal side into it. It's a contract of employment for your dream job. So it's obviously pretend, but you write down what you want your dream job to be, your title, and all the qualities of the job that you want, and you sign it, and it's signed by your employer, the universe. But it's just a kind of a way for you to focus your mind on what kind of job you want and what you want from the job. So dream job is really huge. So I would say, yeah, a lot of like soulmate, baby, dream job, dream house comes up a lot. A lot of people, this could potentially just be kind of Ireland. It's very challenging in Ireland to get a house now. It's even hard to rent over here, so it's hard to get on the property ladder. So a lot of people want a house there, and we have actually a property contract on the website as well. So your dream house contract, and then finally abundance. People just wanting money to be able to just be a bit more financially independent. And we've a Pause.Peny check on the website. But a lot of these things again go back to your mindset. And typically, what I see with what people are doing wrong is, say, for money, that mindset of like, I'm so broke, I can't afford this, which could be true, but you don't need to repeat that to yourself over
Hmm.
and over again. You can just say, it's coming, me next. I'm open to opportunities to make more money, you know, like not have such a negative kind of association with money. And you can even one thing to do is, if you want abundance or money in your life, just, if your listeners think like, when I say the word money, what is the first thought that comes into your head? Is it like, oh God, I wait for payday and I'm so broke? Or, and same when you're looking for a soulmate, what are you saying? Like, are
Hmm.
you saying things like, it's never going to happen? Oh my God, someone gets engaged and you're literally like, not again, another person. I'm never going to meet anybody. I'm getting so old. Like, we've people don't realize that they are manifesting in the opposite direction of where they want to go. Their thoughts are not aligned with what they want, and they don't actually even recognize it.
Hmm.
So, those are the kind of key things that are people. I find that people that follow me are manifesting, and I suppose I'm a female. I'm in that mom stage. Um, so maybe that's another reason why people kind of relate to me. You kind of follow people if you relate to them on something. Um, but yeah, those are the kind of key things that I'm seeing.
Hmm. So one thing that I feel would be an issue when it comes to, or a challenge per se, when it comes to manifesting is when you start to manifest something you really wanted, maybe your partner or a loved one doesn't necessarily want that as well, or they're the opposite of you, where you want this to happen and they're wanting the opposite to end because they have the negative thoughts, they're manifesting the opposite. So, how can somebody go about in that situation manifesting it? And that because obviously we can't change that other person, we can't help them manifest things, but how do you navigate that space?
Yeah, and I think okay, so I people ask me this question all the time, like how my partner is really negative and how do I manifest for them? They hate their job or whatever. So you have that side, and I always say, hold on, for let's take it back. You cannot manifest for somebody else, right? That's just number one. You can't manifest for somebody else, but you can help them on their path, right? So you can practice the gratitude. Myself and my husband did a month gratitude challenge together. It's like one of the best things. I believe I've married my soulmate anyway. We have a good relationship. We're very open, very good communication. But we did a month of a gratitude practice together. So you can help people on their journey. Sometimes you have to really help them, catch them when they're being negative, help them change it up, do little things like that, like the gratitude practice, do the manifestation box with them, get them to read the positive books, go for a walk together. We know that that works. But what I would say the challenge is, let's say somebody contacted me recently and was like, I really want to move from the city to the country, but my husband does not, right? And the reality is, for the person that wants to move and the other person that does not, it's very hard for the person to manifest the move when they know that the move is also subject to the husband coming with them. So you've got to get aligned together because you are not going to, one part of manifestation is believing that it's actually going to happen for you. You need to visualize it, you need to see it, you need to believe it. If you think that your partner is saying, absolutely no way we're moving, how are you going to visualize that? You're not going to be able to. There's going to be a block,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's going to be a block. And this is what happens. This is what happens when maybe couples decide someone wants two kids, somebody wants three, and they're like, no, no, I'm not. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to have the child. You still potentially could, right? Potentially. Um, but you have to ask yourself, is that the right thing to do in a relationship when you're not aligned? So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's harder to manifest something if you need the other person to be in agreement with you, whether it's a house move or a new car, that you're going to really struggle to manifest that when you know in the background these negative thoughts are going to keep coming into your head. Well, he doesn't want to move. He's not going to move. This is never going to happen because he doesn't want to do it, but I want it. So it's just you need to get alignment there. I think together is kind of key.
Mm. Okay, I could see that. I know someone who has has the abundance mindset, especially when it comes to money, but the other person is the exact opposite, where they have that lack of we don't have enough, we need to fix this. And so there's that disconnect there.
Yeah, well, like in our relationship, I'll even give you an example. My husband, he's a tax lawyer, but he's really mathematical, really logical with money, really good with money, always budgets, has a spreadsheet, is telling me the spending, and he tells me I am talented at spending money, right? And I am. And I am because I'm just like, it's gonna come. It's like this was like the guy I was dating. I was dating him and I had to borrow. He was like, I had a loan of 10,000 euro, which is not that much because our education is pretty much free here. But he paid it off for me as my boyfriend the first year of dating because he was like, I do not want you paying the interest, so you can pay me back. And I have still had this very abundant kind of mindset. And even today on my Instagram stories, I said, I really like Pellegrino water, sparkling water. And he says to me, why are you buying Pellegrino water? It tastes the same as the own supermarket brand store water, and it's quadruple the price. And I say to him, I like it. And I'm a daily manifester. So every time I pick up the Pellegrino water, I say, this is what a billionaire would buy, right? Now, I'm not saying that I go and buy Chanel bags and sunglasses and all that, but the little things like
Hmm.
the water that I like. And he wouldn't do that, though. He would be like, no, no, it tastes the same. Let's be a bit more practical. But it still works. But he's not negative about money. He's just more like thoughtful about it. And I think that there's a difference between saying to somebody, we can't afford that, that's too expensive, and um, you can't do that. And even I made a huge mistake. I never shut down a particular account after we traded in our car, and it basically was like a tolls for your car, where if you go over a certain toll, you pay the money, but it comes directly out of my account, our joint account. But of course, I forgot to shut the count down because I had so much on my mind. And whoever bought our car is
Oh.
going over the tolls for €6.20 a day for the last 6 months, and I never noticed it. And my husband went crazy. And I just said to myself, okay, I have no control over this now. I made a mistake and I recognize the mistake. And obviously the money is gone and it's probably close to $1,000, right? There's nothing I can do. But it's okay. And hopefully, whoever was driving that car needed it. I don't know. And honestly, and at the same time, I treated myself to a pair of Chanel glasses and I lost them. Couldn't find them. And I still was like, okay, it's a material possession, not a big deal. The very next day, the Chanel glasses showed up. I found them. And I got a client that wants one-to-one coaching that will like cover all the costs. And like, I just really believe that when you stop obsessing over things, you are, things will work out. Now, I'm not saying you go and you just start doing stupid shit, like not shutting down your accounts and spending money on expensive things. But remember your mindset around money and remember that, like, if it's out of your control, obsessing over it is not going to change the outcome. You just have to learn from it, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, so myself and my husband are quite different when it comes to money as well, but it works.
Hmm.
But he probably wants to kill me half the time.
And it's like you said, you have to show yourself self-compassion. And in that instance, you showed yourself self-compassion. You didn't shame and guilt yourself over it. You probably felt some guilt behind the decision or whatever, but you focused on the self-compassion side of things more intensely, which is why I think maybe that went the way that it went.
Yeah, and also I do like the I obviously I have self-compassion, but I was like, okay, look, I've made a mistake. I'm never going to do that again. That money could have gone to a charity. I that's the way I look at it. So I have
Mhm.
contacted them, the people that charged all the money out of my account, not the owner of the vehicle, and I am wrong. So I there's no expectation that I'll get the money back, but I've made a promise. If this money comes back, it's going to a charity.
Mm.
So that's the way I think of it. I'm like, look, you made the mistake, but if it does come back, at least let me do some good with it and let me give it to like a charity,
Mhm.
probably a children's charity or something like that. So, um, yeah, like you just can't beat yourself up over these things. You don't have control over them. You made a mistake. Okay, you're not going to do it again. Now, don't repeat those mistakes. I don't
Mhm.
repeat my mistakes. That's one thing I would say. Like I made a mistake. I know it's a mistake. It was a bad mistake. I lost money. We're not, here to just throw money around the place, but there's nothing I can do about it now. But I believe me, it won't happen again.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the key. You learn. I say it to my 5-year-old all the time, mistakes are great for learning.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So now that we're getting near the end of the episode, I have three questions which I ask all guests, and these questions are over the topics of what this podcast is, which is live, love, and grow.
Okay.
S- So the
I
first
always
question,
find these the hardest questions on any podcast. The ones in the end, I'm
yeah.
always like, okay, hit them with me, hit me with them.
So the first question I have is, what advice can you share about how to create a life that leaves a positive impact on the world?
I would say if you follow your purpose, you are guaranteed to leave a positive impact on the world.
Mm,
Just guaranteed. And if you don't know what your purpose is, think about the things you love. I remember after the loss of the baby, I was going for a walk down by the beach, and Oprah was chatting to somebody. I was listening to the podcast, and she said, "What do you love to do?" And I remember anytime any podcasts are on and there's a question from the host, I pause it and I answer the question myself before the guest answers it. So it always takes me forever um, to go through podcast episodes. And I remember thinking, I just love talking to people. I'd love to have a podcast. And I think if you follow what you love, and I love talking about manifestation and gratitude, and I feel like that part of my journey already has kind of left a positive mark on some people, So if you follow your purpose and have the courage to follow your purpose, I would say.
mm. Yeah, I like that. What are some practical ways people can cultivate self-love?
I think firstly, and I would always say this, is start with the gratitude practice. Because I find when you start practicing gratitude, you just you become aware of all the little things on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And you actually start to become aware of your thoughts. So I would start with the gratitude practice, affirmations, absolutely affirmations. Like 2023, I started practicing affirmations very diligently, and I'd put 3 up on my Instagram stories every single morning. And they really helped me. My affirmations would be based on however I was feeling. Like if I wasn't having a good day and I was like, oh my God, this business, should I do it? Like it would be like, again, everything always works out for me. The best is yet to come. Or it could even be, I am worthy. I am my authentic self. So like affirmations are really good for rewiring the brain. And then just visualization. Visualize yourself how you want to show up in the world. So gratitude, affirmations, visualization slash manifestation. Visualization is part of manifestation, really.
Hmm. So the last question I have is, what is one actionable tip someone could do today to grow 1% better?
Let me think about it. They can only do one tip to grow 1% better. I think I'd have to go again back to a gratitude practice, a simple one, like a simple gratitude practice, writing one thing per day. Not only does it like strengthen your positive neural pathways, but it actually has an impact on the other people around you. You're positive, that it, you know, it makes other people, we all know what it's like to go meet people and they're like just literally drain your energy. And
Mhm.
then there's the opposite people that do that. So I think if you do anything, I would start, I'd absolutely start a gratitude practice. I've started it with my kids. They're 5, 3, and then the twins are a year and a half. And I really, really notice it in my son already. Like,
Mm.
like we were walking to school the other day and it was raining, and I was like, "Oh, it's raining." And he said, "Well, Mommy, at least I have a jacket." And then one day there was a homeless guy outside the supermarket, and my son said, "Why, Mommy, is he outside? What's the cup in his hand?" Guy was looking for money in his cup. And I said, some people don't have homes, and we're really lucky because we have a home. And he has to sleep on the street outside. And he just looked at me and he was like, "I'm so grateful we have a house." And he's 5.
Hmm.
So I've really started to notice, and I think kids need it these days as well. There's a
Hmm.
lot of social media. There's a lot of podcasts now going up, Jonathan Haidt, about kids and getting phones and things. And I think to build resilience and confidence, gratitude, like start them young. And the only way that kids are going to do it is really if the parents are. You have to be it yourself. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you have to be practicing it. I get up in the morning and it's free. Gratitude is free. I say, like, I'm so grateful for my coffee this morning, or that I got an exercise session in, or whatever it is. And I'll ask my son what he's grateful for. And like he's gotten so good now at choosing something that happened like the day before or that's coming. Like he's gone to Greece with his dad and his little older sister. They went to Greece to visit their aunt. And he's like, "I'm so grateful I get to go on holidays." And he's only 5.
Hmm.
He's only 5. So like it's really start them young, even when they can't talk. I say to the twins, "What are you grateful for?" They're a year and a half. They can't speak. But I'll say something like, "Oh, they're so grateful that they had a good night's sleep," or that they have an amazing childminder. It's the repetition of hearing the words and then the other kids in the house hear it. So yeah, gratitude practice is going to make you even more than 1% better. It's just the best thing I think everyone should be, and every corporate should have a gratitude wall or tree in place. I
Hmm.
believe that's what I'm going to try and get. That's what I'm going to try and get into every corporate, a gratitude tree.
Awesome. Well, how can people connect with you?
So I am on Instagram. I'm under Yvonne Tchrakian, manifest underscore manifest. I do lives and Zooms and stuff every now and again, just on this topic of manifestation. I'm on LinkedIn, Yvonne Tchrakian. All our products, our manifestation box, gratitude box is on Pause.Peny, PAUSEPENNY.com. And then my podcast is All Up In Your Biz, and it's on all platforms. And there's some solo episodes if people want to learn a little bit more about um, manifestation.
And how can the audience support you on your journey?
Oh God, I know it sounds so simple, but just be nice to people. Just be kind. Like, we have no idea what people are going through. Just be kind, be grateful, watch what you say to people, watch what you say to people online. If you don't like what somebody is saying or what they put up or the post they put up, I know everybody's has a right to have their opinion, but remember the intention behind it. Person might be just, you know, the intention is good, but you don't like the way they said it or whatever. Just move along.
Hmm.
You know, I really do think that like it's amazing how interactions with other people, and even I still remember back to the time that I had the loss of the baby, and I was outside my front of my house the next day. I was going in to give birth to her, like, and this cyclist shouted at me so loudly. He was screaming at me, um, because my son stepped off the sidewalk. I was wrong, in fairness, like I was wrong. My son stepped off the sidewalk, but he could see it coming, and you know. But anyway, long story short, he could have just said, "Hey, watch." Like my brain was just on another planet. I was going in the next day to give birth to the baby. Um, and I still remember it, that he just shouted at, you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
you just, even if someone like, you're like, what is wrong with them? Like their brain could be off somewhere else because they're going through something challenging and we have
Mhm.
no idea. And if you are beeping somebody because they haven't gone in 2 seconds when the red light comes, or you're huffing and puffing in the supermarket line because somebody's a little bit slow, you've got to check yourself. That's what I say. Check yourself. Like what? Like life's too short to be caught up on, to be sweating the small stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah, just be kind. I know that's not, it is supporting me directly in ways because we could do with a little bit of a nicer world. But if you want to
Mhm.
follow me on Instagram, I'll take that too.
Well, Yvonne, it was really great having you on. I love the actionable tips that you actually put in here, and I hope that people take away what manifestation really is and how to implement that in their life. And I just want to acknowledge you for sharing your story and all the hard work that you're putting in to help people manifest their dreams too.
Thank you for having me. And I hope you're manifesting big things, Matt. Big things for this podcast.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
Now, if you're ready to start your manifesting journey, you can go to Pause.Peny.com. That's PAUSEPENNY.com and use the code MATT15, MATT15 for a 15% discount off of your manifest or your gratitude box. That's Pause.Peny.com and use the code MATT15. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Choose to Live, Love, and Grow podcast. I hope you took something away from this episode that you can implement today just like I did. I'd love to know what your biggest takeaway was from this episode. Let me know by sharing this episode in your Instagram stories and tag me at Matt Fendora. If you've enjoyed this episode, the ones before, and or you're looking forward to future episodes, please hit that subscribe or follow button. It helps me get this information to even more people. No matter what you choose to do, choose to live, love, and grow. Thank you, and have an outstanding day.